We've got a good group today. This is nice. So we're on Sadi Chet, at the very end of Sadi Chet. Sadi Chet, by the way, just like I think I've said this, but I want to say it again. Sadi Chet is, I think, a very hard Siman Shulchan Aruch. I have trouble still with it. And a part of it is that there's a lot of very fundamental principles that are introduced here. And I think it kind of flows from this point, hopefully much better. That's our hope. That's my hope. But we'll start. We're in the Shulchan Aruch. We'll be completely in the Shulchan Aruch today. And we're going to start with Seif. We did Vav last time. We're Seif Zayin. So Jacob, you were here first, so you get the great honor for being on time, right?
Yeah.
Even though you wrote me an email saying you weren't going to be on time and you still showed up. Very impressive. Read Zayin in the Shulchan Aruch for us.
Yeah. Vitza שיש בהפרוח או טיפת דם שנתבס לה עם אחרות, צריך 61 לבטל פליטתה. So, an egg that has in it like a tick or a drop of blood, and it was cooked with other eggs, you need 61 to invalidate what's like left behind by the egg, because we've talked about like it being a birya and you have to take it out, but what's left behind still needs to be invalidated.
Exactly. Right. Good. And just a few things, and then I'm going to ask a question. But I didn't cover this in class, and so I just want to the whole thing about tipat dam of like, you may say, well, it's just a drop of blood. It's not an entire afroch. Why do you have to be 61 against the entire egg? Right. I don't know if anyone thought about this. There's a principle we have of tichla shada bechula, right? That the bad stuff is like spread out in the whole thing, or it casts itself into the whole thing. So once you have an egg with a blood spot, if it's an actual proper blood spot, which is like a whole topic we're not doing in this class, right? As opposed to there can be other spots not in the yolk that are not blood spots that are okay. Then we assume the entire egg is bad. So that's again, the principle, right, is tichla shada bechula. It shows up in the tour. It's from the Gemara, but I didn't cover it, so I just wanted to make sure that term got kind of passed around. So good. All right, so we have 61 to 1 ratio for an egg and Jacob, you said it so nicely, of the pleta of the egg, of the exusion. That was I need a better word, but and not the egg itself is a birya. You got to throw it out, right? That there's no question. We're going to get to that in a few weeks. So question is, do people remember the two shitot? Why do you need 61 as opposed to just 60 against the egg? Yavni. You're on.
Okay. One is that because we're worried that there's variation in size, and so we want to make sure that it's actually, and the other is because the Rambam's approach is that because it's a birya, it's we make it extra fancy.
But who was the first shita?
Everyone else? I don't remember. Sorry.
The Rosh. The Rosh is the first shita. Yeah. So it's the Rambam against the Rosh. Right. Just to say it again, the Rosh thinks it has to do with eggs vary in size. So this is the way we make up for it. And we kind of played it out in class of, instead of people like making them just do a displacement test on what the volume of all the eggs is, we just have a general rule that you just need an extra egg just in case, right? And but the Rambam says, no, this is kind of like an extra stringency because the egg is a birya, that we require extra amounts, one extra egg against it in order to do bitul. So good. That's eggs.
So wait, I have a question on the Rambam. If the problem for the Rambam is that it's a birya, why is it, for example, Ganashe also 1 in 61?
Sorry, Isaac, you broke up as the question was asking, at least for me.
Sorry. So if the problem with the egg, according to the Rambam, is that it's a birya, then shouldn't that apply for all other biryas as well?
Yes, it would either.
But that becomes a problem for Gid Hanashe, or sorry, Zora B'Selah, which is the entire place where we derive Shishim. And Rambam has, because remember the Kahal, and Rambam was like, oh, the Kahal doesn't count towards the 60, or because it's like this weird special case, but for everything else, you're really looking at a 1-59 ratio.
Good. No, you're adding sort of good. So two, I think the Rambam says that's only the case for things that are derabanan, right? The 1-59, right?
Right.
Yeah. So the 1-60, yeah. So would it apply to every other birya, and why doesn't it apply to Gid? It could potentially apply to every other birya. Gid is special because Gid is a weird birya, and then it also doesn't have any flavor. So the Gid HaNasheh itself has no flavor, and it's actually a derabanan rule that we're worried about the flavor of the Shuman Hagid, even though that's not a deraita problem. So Gid is a weird situation. I could also imagine, though, by the way, I didn't look into this, but this is just kind of my own seichel, so maybe it's wrong. Hopefully you won't laugh at me, that an egg as a birya is a special case because it's not an obvious birya, because again, this goes back to my whole thing with the tipat dam, is that it's something inside the egg that's the problem, not the egg itself. And so you may not think it's a birya, right? It doesn't look like a birya in that sense. It looks like a birya. It doesn't look like an unkosher thing, right? It looks like an egg. This is actually the problem with eggs, is eggs are kind of a hidden isur to them. That was only a thought I had earlier this week when going over it. I didn't look into how people play out the Rambam there so much, but partially because I'm not such an expert in eggs. I did my Chavruta Shani Rosenbaum, and I went over it at one point a couple of years ago during that Pei not Pei Zayin, Pei Vav, but it's been a while. So yeah. All right. Any other thoughts? My corrections, questions on eggs? So, but I just want to remind people for one more thing about eggs. This is a good just bottom line. We have a principle that an egg, a beitzah froach, even if it has the shell still on, still exudes bad flavor. But for a beitzah that's from an of tameh, does not, if it's shelled, exude flavor, right? The shell protects it. That's just a principle we have. I don't think this is about like the science of what exudes flavor. You could say it's about there's meat, the flavor of meat, and the afroch has a stronger flavor than eggs. And actually, we didn't do this piece in the Gemara, but there's a whole thing about, do eggs have flavor at all, right? They may not have a flavor. They're like water. But also, and I think that's part of it, and also just the egg afroch with an afroch might be we're a lot more nervous about that case than we are about other cases. So, okay, good. Any other final thoughts? All right, let's go on to Chet. Chet, the beginning of it is, I'm going to read the beginning and then I'm going to hand it over, because the beginning is a little bit boring in some ways. Kechal mitbatel betisha v'chamishim, right? A kechal, I mean, it's very interesting, but kechal is actually covered somewhere else. If you actually look, right, in the shach, he actually just, in kafeh, he just says, right, ayin la'el siman tzadi nitbaru b'dinei kechal ki sham mekomam. It doesn't belong here. So it does, in the sense that, as I said, I think the end of Tzadi Chet is things that don't quite fit into the 60 model, and that's why it's listed. But the Ramah here is what I'm really interested in. So Kechal is mitbatel against 59, right? As we saw in the Gemara, right? Kechal is with 60, but it's among the minyan. It itself gets counted to do the bitul, and so therefore we only need 59 of them. So Haggah, Alish, please take the Haggah for us.
I see. Okay. אוקיי. כל האיסורים שנוהגים בזמן הזה, כולם מתבטלים בשישים, מלבד חמץ בפסח ויין נסך, כאשר נתבהר בהלכותיהם, ובלבד שהאיסור אינו נותן טעם בגדירה, אבל אם נותן טעם בגדירה, והוא אסור מצד עצמו, אפילו באלף לא בטיל. כל זמן שמרגישים טעמו, ולכן מלח ותבלין מדברים דאבידי לטעמה, אם אסורים מחמת עצמן, אינן בטלים בשישים. And there. Okay.
Good.
So all the isurim, and in our times, all the isurim are batelim bashishim, except chametz during Pesach and yain nesech. Okay, maybe questions later. When he says yain nesech, he means like damianan, yain nesech. Is there a difference? And
potentially not. Yeah, potentially they're the same thing, right?
Same thing like yain nesech. As was explained at the place where these halachot are dealt with.
Exactly.
And it's all the bitul bashishim is valid in the cases where there is no ta'am in the gdeira, in the pot. But if we feel the ta'am in the same gdeira, and it's forbidden itself, the piece, I think. So even so it's lo batel afilu ba'elef. The whole time, as long as we feel the flavor, then it's not batel bashishim. So therefore, salt and spices are from things that are like, translate like susceptible to the taste, or
I would say
taste.
Avidi Latam, I would say, right, they're made, right?
Asuim latam, right?
Yeah,
Like
made for flavor.
made for flavor, right? So it's great. Okay, so are made for flavor. So if they are forbidden themselves, so they are not annihilated in the 60.
Great. And give us an example of something that's a sur mitzvah that's mo, something that's
I don't know if it's tikrovet avodah zarah, let's say, for example. So no, but no, it would be different.
Yeah, great. You have avodah zarah,
whatever.
It's so right. That's mitzvah atzmo. And what's something that's not mitzvah atzmo?
There's not mitzvah atzmo. Yeah, so I'm not sure now if it's not mitzvah atzmo that it becomes forbidden.
Good. So I'll give you this sense. Like imagine the following: you drop pork juice on your pepper, right? Then the pepper is asur, not because the pepper is asur, but it's
because of the great.
Pork juice is absorbed. And therefore, if you then drop the pepper in your soup, right, and you can still taste the pepper, not that you could taste the pork juice, that you could taste the pepper, that's not asur if it's, if the pork juice, maybe even potentially if the pepper is batel, but right, it's not never batel as long as you can taste the pork juice, taste the pepper, right? So this is an important concept that we're going to get into of an isur machmat atzmo versus, right, an isur because of what it absorbed or for some other reason, right? So it's something else in it and not the thing itself, which interacts to some extent with Hanan, but not, fully. Might be kind of a semi-exception to Hanan in some places. So everyone's on board when I say Hanan, by the way. Just want to make sure we're the Chatichat or Chatichat. Sometimes it's Chatichat Atzman Nasen Nevela. Sometimes there's an ayin that's stuck in there just to confuse you. But it's a term that we're going to throw around. It's just an acronym to know. Okay, good. So this is the Ramah essentially saying actually everything is 60. And don't forget that it's all the primary concern for all of this was always ta'am, and therefore, if you feel that, if you can taste it, it's still a problem. All right. Good. Any questions so far? Thoughts before we move on to some of the later achronim on this topic? Okay. I want to start with the Ber Hetev. You guys probably already know by now. This is what I like to use for this class. Yudchet in the Ber Hetev. By the way, Alish, great reading. Yavni, also you, Jacob, was great reading too. I didn't mean to insult you there. Yavni, can you take the Ber Hetev Yudchet Hanohagim? This is right where the Ramah says Kol ha'isrim hanogim b'zman hazeh, and it's actually really a comment on Kol, I think, more than it is Nohagim. And Yavni, you're on mute whenever you decide.
Yeah, hang on, I'm just finding it. הנוהגים. פירוש בין של תורה, בין של דבריהם. No, yeah?
Yes, exactly what I wanted you to read. So,
meaning whether it's Doraita or Darabanan.
Exactly. It doesn't matter, right? It's and this actually goes into, right, Isaac, you were bringing up the whole question about maybe some people say that Darabanan is only 1 in 59, and I think he's responding to that in particular. He's like, everything is 1 in 60 at this point. So 1 against 60. I shouldn't say 1 in 60. That's actually a bad term. So 1 against 60. So you always need 61 things, one of which is the Isur. Good. Okay. I also wanted to, the next thing I wanted to do was, it's the next page for me. I think the Pitchei Tshuva Yavni, since I only gave you something short, why don't you keep reading Pitrei Tshuva Tet? This is on the whole thing that it has to be only Isur Machmat Atzman. Actually, you know what? Did I have it in the wrong? I think I have it in the wrong order. No, actually, I'm not done. Yavni, pick up with Yud Tet and the Ber Hetet, which is long, but you get to, and then we'll.
Atzman, Kugon Tavlin. So that's on the same issue of Mechamat Atzman, right?
Exactly.
Kugon Tavlin shel Avodat Kochavim ושל עורלה וכיוצא בו, ואפילו אין אסורים אלא מדרבנן, לאפוקי אם הם רק בלויים מאיסור. So this is what you said that, should I translate it or we've already said it?
I think I said it, so we can keep going.
והטעם שהחמירו בתבלין, לפי שמן הסתם נותן טעם באלף, ולפי זה היכד ידוע בבירור שאינו נותן טעם, כגון שנפל כורת אחד של מלח או תבלין ליורה גדולה, מותר.
Good, stop there for a second.
מותר.
Yeah.
Just the end of the line. So it's saying that the real point is the reason why we're so machmir on them is because we know that they give flavor even in 1,000. So if you know that it didn't give flavor because it's a really small amount and a really big amount, it's not really a mashu. It's a nitinat tam, and so then it can be permitted.
Yeah, right. There could have been a hava mina of, if it's a thing that's there for give flavor, it's never batel, not because it is giving flavor, but because it is a thing to give flavor. And it says, no, it actually has to give flavor, right? So dropping a little, a piece of avodah zarah salt, if such a thing could exist, in your, that's probably a bad example, but,
criticizing the Be'er Hetev?
No, he doesn't bring up salt as avodah zarah.
Doesn't he? Oh, he said melach. What else would it be?
He said tavlin. He said tavlin shel avodat kochavim. That was his.
No, he said koret echad shel melach. Oh, what would make? Or shel tavlin, I guess.
Oh yeah, he doesn't say what the problem with the salt. Yes, I guess avodah zarah salt. We'll go for it. If you just drop one piece of it, one little grain, that's not a concern, right? So that's batel. All right, good. That's an important halacha number one, which we saw in class. Keep going.
ופסק בתורת חטאת דאפילו נפל מלח ותבלין לדבר ששווה בשמו, אפילו הכי, כיוון דחלוק בטעמה לא בטיל. So in general, it's the Rama. We saw that the Rama says that in general, min b'mino is, or min b'she'eno mino is an issue of the name of the thing rather than the taste of the thing. But in this case, the Rama says that it's even if it's in this case, it's we go by taste for the issue of the
at least to be machmir, right, about it, right? Because right, if it's if you drop salt in more salt, it's not even if it's made to give tam, it's not giving any tam, right, at that point, right? So, but if you drop salt in, I don't know, let's pretend for the moment, I actually don't think this is necessarily halachically the case, but bear with me, that sea salt and it is, sea salt and salt that you get from like a rock that somewhere are different species, right? Those would be different it'd be min b'she'eno mino, right?
By name.
Oh, by name. Yeah, that'd be by name, right? I think he would maybe still say that could be a problem, right? Because they're different names. But definitely if you have a case where they are different flavors, right? You have two things called salt, but they taste different from each other. Maybe sea salt does taste different from non-sea salt. Then you have to worry about it. So, Jacob, sorry, you look like you have a look on your face like I said something wrong, and I just want to make sure. No, okay, good. And Andres, you look like you wanted to say something too. So. No, okay. So I do that. Hopefully it's okay that I call on people when they look like they have something to say. So, okay. That's lo batil. Aval. We're at aval, and I'm gonna.
So I don't know. I don't think it's only להחמיר, because אבל אם נפל לדבר ששווה בטעמו, בטל בשישים. Then you don't have to worry that it's this super flavorful thing.
Oh, you're right. Yes. Sorry, I misspoke. Yeah. So if they are of the same ta'am, then it's shishim, right? Because at the end of the day, we're worried about the thing giving ta'am. We're not worried about we're outside of the word of bitul b'shishim because it gives ta'am. So if it doesn't give ta'am, we're back in the world of shishim. So, okay, good. And I'm gonna thank you for that correction, Yavni. I appreciate that. I'm gonna pass it off. You've read a lot and very beautifully to Andres. Keep going in the Bear Hetev here. And you're on mute too, so just you know.
Do you hear me?
I do.
I'm looking for the aval.
We just did the aval nafal devar sheshaveh b'tamo batel b'shishim, and then it should be I have a ve and then there's the letter kaf vechatav, and then be'isr v'heter also an acronym form. So which is very annoying. So I assume, by the way, I should say this as you find the place. There's lots of books called Isser V'Heter, shockingly. Usually when people refer to it, they're talking about it's the Trumata Deshen's son wrote a book called the Isser V'Heter, the Isser V'Heter Aruch. But there's other books. The Ramah wrote his own book called the Isser V'Heter. It'll often be called his Isser V'Heter. And there's other, the Marshal wrote one, I think, called Isser V'Heter. So it was a very popular book title for a long time in Jewish history, annoyingly so. Okay. Andres, you with us?
Yeah, וכתב באיסור והיתר. אוקיי. וכתב באיסור והיתר, דאינו בטל אפילו באלף, היינו מדרבנן, ואם אינו ידוע, אם מרגישים טעמו או לא, מתיר.
Keep going.
Oh, okay. Matir bechulei gafna.
Gafna, yeah. So.
Bechulei gafna.
Be'or Zarua in the book Or Zarua.
Be'or Zarua. Gam ata leachilo le'oved kochavim. That's
Mesiach lefi tumo.
Mesiach. Yeah. Mesiach lo tumo. וכתב התז וצריך עיון.
Stop there. So explain that part.
And I don't know who wrote in Isur V'Heter. Who's that?
Yeah. He wrote in the Isur V'Heter. What did he write?
That it doesn't nullify אפילו באלף. It means it only concerns me the Rabbanan.
Exactly. Yeah. It's only a derabanan level that something, if like I drop this avodah zarah salt into a lot of soup and it gives flavor still, but it's not. And I think Isaac, you brought this up in class that salt doesn't actually necessarily give flavor, but let's for the moment go with it that it does. It's a great critique. It gives flavor. We'll use peppers even better. They give flavor. It's only a derabanan level that it's asur at this point. So my claim, by the way, I don't know if I'm still with it, but my claim is the reason being it's not ochel, right? And ochel is really what's asur, deraita. Here it's and you couldn't say this is actually about chanan, but I don't think it's about that. Not chanan. I mean, I think it's about tamki kar deraita. I don't think it is though. I think it's actually just about things that are not ochel are not deraita asur. And you know, and a proof of that, you never eat salt by itself, right? Well, you might, but that would be, you know, weird. So it's not that I haven't done it, but it would be weird. So all right, Andres. So yeah, it's only a derabanan level, right? So what can you do therefore?
And if you don't feel in any way the taste,
or if you don't know, if you taste it, like you're confused. Am I tasting the pepper? Am I not? Right?
So you're not matir in any way.
Oh no, right. Although you are permitted, right, in such cases, according to the Or Zarua, even today, right, to give it to a non-Jew who you very innocently say, taste this for me. Tell me what you think, right? Without trying to say why you're doing it and how you don't lead them on, right? So they don't lie to you. You can even though we've gotten rid of the whole tasting thing, he brings it back in this case, right? So having a non-Jew taste it. But good. Keep going a little bit more.
וכתב התז, I don't know, וצריך עיון?
Yeah.
וצריך עיון לעניין שומן של איסור שנפל למאכל, המה יהיה בטל בשישים על טעם מעביד.
Good. Good. What's his problem here?
So the Taz is asking, what happens if there is shuman of, I don't know, something of a forbidden thing that falls into something to eat? And then the question is, why is it batel b'shishim?
Good, because what are oils and fats meant for?
Because they are meant to give taste.
Exactly, right? Why do you add, fat to your chicken soup? To make it tasty, right? So he's like, why isn't that in this list? So, okay, he's got an answer for it. Don't worry. Keep going.
ותירוץ בשם איסור והיתר, ולומר קראי טעם בזה, אלא דבר חריף, ולא שומן, דאף שגם הוא מטעים המאכל, הוא וממתיקו.
מכל מקום.
אוקיי, ומכל מקום, אין נרגש כל כך כמו דבר חריף, משום אחי, כתב כאן, הרמה, כגון מלח ותבלין.
Good.
Okay.
Yeah. So
stop there. The solution is given by the Isur V'Heter because he doesn't think these things are ta'am, but only something harif.
Exactly.
In
other words, yeah, even though it flavors the food and sweetens it, right? Sweeten it doesn't necessarily mean davka sweet, but it gives it more, more flavor, right? It's not as you don't feel it the way you feel something that's harif, right? I think what he's making, I just want to say this out because I think this is important, is it's not about is the thing something I added to my soup to give it flavor. It's about, is it something that is like, it's very sharp in the sense that it's like its essence is about its flavor, right? More than it is about I added it to this thing because of flavor. So if I accidentally added non-kosher fat to something because I felt like, oh, this thing needs more fat, or it might even, like, to put it a different way, like imagine I add a non-kosher tomato to something because how it's non-kosher tomato, orla tomato, I don't know, tomatoes or whatever it is, who knows, some because I want to give it more acidic of a flavor, right? That's not the same thing as adding spices, right? That's a different, he's distinguishing between those two categories. One is adding food that happens to balance the flavors, and one is adding spices that are really there for flavor, that are sharp things.
Although I'm assuming, like, the idea of it's something that we're not putting in the category of machal. So not exactly food for what you're saying, but yeah.
Great point. You wouldn't eat the fat. It's a great point. You wouldn't eat the fat by itself. So it may not even, tomato might be a bad exact. It's not even a food, but it's not something that's so sharp in its flavor that you wouldn't necessarily look at it and say, this is, it wouldn't go in your spice drawer. Let's put it that way, right? That's maybe the best way to put it. Right. There are things that go in your spice drawer and other things that you add to stuff to give them flavor, but it's not in your spice drawer, right? Because it's not harif. So, but does that make sense that this Taz, it was the Taz, right, who brings this up? But yeah.
The question is the Taz and the Isur V'Heter is the answer.
Yeah, he brings the Isur V'Heter's answer, but the Taz, I think it's a very, no pun intended, very sharp question of the Taz of like, well, wait a second, then anything I add that is there for flavor should be a problem if I can, so. Okay.
But, sorry, the question, just to be sure. Okay? So when we say that it's davar harif, how is it a solution again?
If it's a davar harif, right, then it's afilu be'elef is not batil, right? As long as I can still feel it, right? But the Shuman might be, according to this, right? Even if I could feel it, although I think its general idea here is you're not going to feel, right? It's not, right? Here's the idea, and I think behind this Taz, the Taz isn't saying that if you can taste the Shuman, that it's okay, even if it's 60. What he's saying is, if I drop unkosher pepper into my soup, I shouldn't touch it, right? Or I should give it to a non-Jew to taste it, because I assume that it's not Batel Be'elef, right? I shouldn't assume that about Shuman, right? That's a different category. But you might have been afraid because the Shuman was added for flavor that would be a problem. So. Okay, good. That's how we do on time. I'm gonna actually yeah, so I want to I'm gonna take over for a second here in this, because I just kind of want to finish this Ber Hetev and then we'll keep going. Mishum hachi katav kan Rama kegon melech tavlin. That's why the Rama only writes melech and tavlin, right? He's like, that's why he didn't say shuman, right? He only gives those particular examples. So he's being meduyak about the Rama to support himself. I think it's Orchot Chaim, Siman, whatever it is. Desham lo mahani shishim aflagav de ino devar harif. But he's got somebody else who disagrees, right? And Sarich Lomar Deshani hatam sheyesh sham tama v'chazuta. So he's got a different case, but he says that case where it seems to disagree with what I just said, that's because it gives both flavor and appearance, right? And so it says, what are we talking about? For instance, gabe beitza sheliv nobo, right? That you use an egg to whiten food, bo ma'achal, right? Then maybe that is a problem, even if you can't taste it, or if it's less than 1 in 60. Masha'enkin kan, right, which is different from here, the Shuman case, right? V'chatav od Shuman basar shenafal toch machal chalav batel b'shishim kivan she'ena yisur mitzad atzmo rak mitzad tarovot, right? And so the other thing he says is when you drop, you have like a milchik soup and you drop some Shuman basar in it, and then you say, maybe, well, what about that case? You can definitely taste the Shuman. He says, no, it's right there. The isur is not mitzad atzmo, right? It's only from the mixture of the meat and milk that makes it an isur in the first place. So we're going to get a little bit more into this whole question about how meat and milk interacts with this whole thing, which gets a little bit confusing. So, but good. Any questions, thoughts, critiques? Jacob, please.
I'm just a bit curious. This is more of a culinary-ish thing, but how do you, as someone who likes working with food, I'm confused by the idea of eggs like dyeing food white in particular. I know like an egg wash on bread, but this idea is just odd to me.
I don't know. No could also be to make it clear, right? If I remember correctly, it doesn't, because it come actually from the Gemara in Beitza, or is it a Rashi on the Gemara in Beitza? It's one of the two where that comes up. It's actually in the sugya about Devar Sheyesh Lo Matirin, which we're gonna get to soon. But I think I have that remembered correctly. Yeah, I remember when I first learned it, I was thinking I don't actually know what he's talking about. So I don't know. I don't have a good culinary answer to that. You could, I don't know, maybe using eggs for color, maybe. Think about
I just
like an egg wash, I understand, but that's not whitening. But I can understand that.
Well, no, a clear soup, right? Eggs could dye a clear soup, right? So
right.
That kind of thing. Yeah. So, but okay. Good. And by the way, it's a great, I just want to emphasize your question, Jacob. A lot of this is really introducing us to an ancient kitchen in a lot of ways. You'll see that it also, by the way, in their world, this is a very Boyarin-esque statement I'm about to make, right? There's definitely, it's definitely a patriarchal world, but they don't fall into the categories that are the patriarchy we're used to falls into, of like only women are in the kitchen kind of idea, right? Definitely the men in their world are also very much in the kitchen. And at least in some points of time, either that or they're making it all up. I don't know, but I don't think so. It sounds like from some of the stuff that they're actually doing some of the cooking. So, and we have a Gemara. Who is it? Is it Rava who would do all the cooking before Shabbos? It was part of his prep, right? Somebody, come on, we got some Gemara experts here. Someone tell me, do I get that right? It's Rava? No? All right.
I don't remember who.
It's Rava's who I just go to as my default for any rabbinic story. I just I put Rava in there, and if I get it wrong, I get it wrong. All right, good. I want to look at the Pirchei Tshuva here on right on Sif Katan Tet, Mechmat Atzman, right? Same issue. So maybe Andres, you just read me. Isaac, you want to read Mechmat Atzman? And Isaac, oh, no, Isaac, you're not on mute anymore. So great.
I'm on, no on mute. I'm sorry. Where? Back in Bear Hatev?
No, in the Pirchei Tshuva.
Okay. Which Seif Katan?
Tet.
Okay, sorry, just found out. Mechamat Atzman. I have no idea what that.
He says, "Ayin Bear."
In the name of the Taz. Linyan Shuman Vigien. Someone.
I have no clue who this is.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
And someplace in them. Demashma Kitsat. Dehahava Yin.
Huadin.
Huadin. Okay. Yain the Hometz Lamakle Avelatama.
Good.
Okay. So according to someone writing in the name of the Taz, for
that was Bear Hatev, right? See the Bear Hatev in the name of the Taz in terms of Shuman, right? Which we just saw. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So. And then someone else says that in this case, wine and vinegar are not considered this Aved Latama, which is, specifically for the purpose of imparting flavor, which is this seems to be like an extension of what we were just talking about, that like if you put in a tomato for flavor, it's not tibalin because a tomato is not a spice. But I do find it interesting that this is not. It seems to be more saying like Aved Ta'ama is only, or technically it should be Avid Ta'ama, only applies to spices and salt, and we just won't entertain the idea of using anything else, which I think is weird because, like, obviously, what else are those things for? Well, preserving.
Yeah, okay. I will think, right, vinegar in particular, right? You might think vinegar, where does it fall on that scale? And he's like, vinegar and wine, that's on the side of Shuman, not on the side of Tavlin, right? Is the important thing here. So this is, I think, could be a real case, right? If you drop some non-kosher vinegar, and right, the bottom line halacha of this would come out, assuming he says demashma ketzat, so it's not 100% in this case, but it seems to be the case that if you drop some, like, you're cooking, you accidentally put some non-kosher vinegar in your soup. Let's pretend for a moment. And it's not, that it's 1 in 60, let's say it's 1 in 100, right? So maybe not a concern in that sense. But let's not worry about the staminam, and let's just say it's unkosher for whatever reason, right? You might be worried that it's not what you said that, well, what if it's there for flavor? It may not be batel at all, be'elef, and so therefore, I either can't eat the soup or I have to get a non-Jew to taste it potentially for me. He says, no, vinegar is not in that category, right? So you can assume it's a 1 in 60 bitul and you're done. So, all right, good. But by the way, as a side note, I don't know if we've talked about this. The whole thing with yain and nesech or staminam, that it's not batel might only be min b'mino, that it's not batel, and it might be that it's if 1 in 60 is fine, it min shebe'eno mino. So, okay. That's Pirchei Tshuva. I just wanted to put that in there to add, and this whole thing is kind of building up a category of what fits into this piece in the Ramah here. And it's really interesting. I think it might be from the Ramah itself, but both the Taz and now this Pirchei Tshuva are really narrowing that this is really only about spices and not about other things, lest you come to be concerned. So, good. Any questions or so forth before we move on to Tet in the Shulchan Aruch? But Isaac, I gave you something very short to read, so I'm going to give you something longer to read, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
Would you like to read Tet in the Shulchan Aruch?
Okay. כדרה שיש בה 59 זיתים היתר, ונפלה בה 2 זיתים, אחד של דם ואחד של חלב, כל אחד מצטרף עם 59 של התר לבטל חברו. Okay, so we have a pot. It's got 59 parts heter, or 59 kazayats. And then you have 2 kazayats fall in. One of them is blood, and one of them is chalev. So 2 kazayats of different types of iser. So for each iser bit that falls in, it joins into the 59 to make 60, to then cancel out the other iser, and this happens both ways. So then it's all heter.
Right. This is, I mean, it's right. It's shocking, but also maybe not, right? This is about, it's not about that there's 2 pieces of iser in there. It's that you can't, we've canceled the taste of iser, right? That the idea behind 60 again is about ta'am, and right, the dam marsh is among the forces against the chalev, and the chalev's in the forces against the dam. So, so we're good. Not that you should do that, but we're good if it happens. So, keep going.
וכן 29 זיתים של התר שנפל בכזית חלב,
yeah, keep going.
ובקערה אחרת, היו 30 של התר ונפל לתוכו כזית של דם, ונתערבו בשוגג מותר. Okay, so again, stressing the point that it has to be an accident. I mean, all of this is for shogeg, for like iser heter anyway.
Good.
So you have 29 kazayats of heter, and then you have a kazayat of chalev that falls into it. And in another pot you have 30 kazayats of heter, and you have a kazayat of dam fall in it, and then those 2 pots are mixed together. It's mutar.
By accident, of course.
Yes, by accident. And so this is like another framing of that same problem.
Good. Keep going. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Right, because either of them, like before you mix the pots together, neither of them is mutar. But once you mix the pots together, they are mutar, because again, you have 59 plus 1 versus 1 for each of the 2 isurim.
Exactly. That's one of several reasons why that's more interesting. Also might have a Hanan question of like, right?
Right. I mean, it would seem like both of those pots are now aser. And if you mix them, they should still be aser, but they're not.
Yeah. So and we're going to get into this for some reason, and it's, those are not Hanan cases, and which is easy to explain away for the Mechaber, because, and this is where I get to remind everybody that in the principle of Hanan, the Mechaber actually paskins that Hanan only applies in mixtures of meat and milk and not for anything else. The Ashkenazi position is not that, which is what's gonna really cause the problem. Everyone can explain the Mechaber there of, okay, you didn't think either of them was Hanan because you don't think that for Shar Yisurim, right? For Dam and for Chalev. But for the Ramah who doesn't push back, you do think that's a problem. Why didn't you speak up here? And so we're gonna have to get into maybe limits of the Ramah's belief in Hanan to some extent. It's which is what we're gonna hopefully have maybe a few minutes to look at, but going forward. So with that, and actually maybe I'll just finish it up. I'll maybe do the Ramah there, right? He says Vikol sheken shtei zeitim echad shel gvina ve'echad shel basar. That if you actually, right, this is the way that for instance, I think it's the Taz brings this up, if I remember correctly. He says, let's imagine you have, 2 vegetable soups. You drop a piece of milk in one and a piece of meat in the other. And so you have maybe one is now both of them, make up a total of 61 zaitim total, right? And you have 1 zait of milk, 1 zait of meat. Then you could the milk and the meat can be marshaled to be mivatel each other in this case as well. So so yeah, that's actually a really interesting case as well. I did bring you a whole tshuva, a piece of it, not a whole tshuva, a beginning of a piece of tshuva from the Beit Ephraim on the sheet that I shared, or on the sources, about this question and how far we're willing to go with it. Like, well, what about just dropping a meat and milk combination into something? Do they still vatel each other? He says no, right? You can't. If I have a piece of meat that had milk drop on it, right, and it's now a milky meat piece, and then I drop that into a kedera, that I can't claim that the meat is marshaled against the milk and the milk is marshaled against the meat, right? That it doesn't work that way. His main claim, because that's its own new isur on its own. So, but okay, good. I want to do a couple more sources. The Berhetev in Sif Katan Kaf, where that they are mitzaref. These two asur flavors are mitzaref against each other, essentially. Alana, are you available to read? Go for it, please.
Yeah, I can read. Okay. Mitzaref. Shetam dam v'chelev eino shaveh. Harei nitbatel tam hachelev b'shishim v'tam hadam b'shishim. Dema li isur hamivatel isur uma li heter hamivatel isur rak sheyibatel tam ha'isur v'lo yehelo od koach litain tam beheter. Okay, so we're talking about the first case with the 59 zaytim of heter, and then 2 zaytim fall in. Each one is a different kind of isur that fall in. And the 2 kinds of isurim that fall in, the zayid of dam and the zayid of chelev, don't have the same taste. And so the ta'am of each one can be batel in the 59 heter plus the other isur, right? Exactly. Because why do I care if it's an isur that's mevatel the isur or a heter who is mevatel the isur? As long as the isur is getting batelled, I don't care what's doing it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that there's no more power to you just don't want to have you just don't want to be able to give ta'am that you need to have enough other stuff for the isur not to give tam to the rest.
Yeah, beautiful. And this is just a couple like that phrase, right? Mali isur mevatel isur, mali heter mevatel isur. Just a good phrase to know. But also that he, this reminds us that at the end of the day, the primary concern is really tam, not 60 or and so as long as it's the flavor of the isur is nullified, that's all we care about. But and he reminds us also there, right? They have to be different flavors, right? So you can't be. I have, I drop in, in my 30 zayit soup, I drop in 1 zayit of dam, and in my 29 zayit I drop in 1 zayit of dam, and then they combine. The dam isn't mevatel dam, right? Don't think that. Right, those 2 flavors combine together and to be problematic. So it's only if they're non-matching flavors, which you see in the mechaber. He brings up, he doesn't say that the same thing. He says they're different things. So all right, good. Let's do the Pirchei Tshuva. Alana, have you keep going here. The Pirchei Tshuva Yud on that same topic.
Kol echad mitzaref.
Yeah.
Okay. Wait, I'm just seeing what that's. Kol echad mitzaref imano tikta. Right. Okay. Imha 50. Okay, fine. Okay. Ayin be.
I didn't look it up. No clue. So
okay.
Some shuvot book. Yeah. So
okay. Wait. V'hu hadin im kezayit basar.
Naseh nevela.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Naseh nevela mechamat chelev. V'kezayit basar naseh nevela mikoach dam. Gam ken kol echad mitzaref levatel ta'am chaviro. Aval, should I keep going?
Yeah. He explains why he's bringing up this case. Keep going because it explains why he's bringing up this case.
Okay. Aval shnei kezeitim she'en ta'amam shaveh she'neseit nevela midvarim she'ta'aman shaveh ein mevatlin.
Zed.
Yeah, zed. Uvayinan shishim neged shnehem.
Good. So
okay, so right, it only works if they're 2 different isurim, but 2 different ta'amim. The 2 isurim have 2 different ta'amim.
Yeah, well, good. There's a. I'm just going to push. There's a little bit more subtle point here. He says, if I have 2 pieces of kosher meat, right, and they become nevela because I drop non-kosher things on both of them. Even though you might have said, right, the havamina here is, well, there are 2 pieces of of brisket, right? Let's say for a minute, one has chalev on it, one has dam on it. I might have said that if I drop those two things, they can't be marshaled against each other as forces because they're both brisket. He says, no, because what they've absorbed though is different. The nevela part, they can be marshaled against each other, right? Dam against chalev, not brisket against brisket. But right, if they are, but if I have now, say, I don't know, brisket and chicken, and both of them absorb blood, the same, then they can't be marshaled against each other.
Hey, Vanti. Oh, so this is about what kind of Isur is making something into a nevela. And if it's two different kinds of Isurim that are making something into a nevela, then those two nevelas can function to batel one another. Is that what you're saying?
Yes,
okay,
exactly. It's about the Isurim and not the piece of the thing that became Asur. Right.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, and that's it. Yeah, it's a very subtle point. I had to read it a few times to figure out what he was talking about. That's what's the limit of what we're doing, because here it's not about dropping the blood and the chalev themselves into it, but something they fell on that are now being dropped into the soup. So it's a second step case essentially. Keep going with the Pirkei Teshuvah here.
Okay, uviyavesh biyavesh ein isurim mevatlin ze et ze v'chein shnei isurim she'asurim mishem echad af she'ein ta'amam shaveh ein mevatlin ze et ze ad kan divarav.
Or dato or something like that.
Dato. Yeah. Okay. So if the two things are both dry things, so there's not an issue of tam, I guess.
Exactly.
Then the two isurim do not nullify one another. And this is also the case when you have two isurim that have the same. This is like that machloket Abai and Rav about shame versus tam. So These are two isurim that have the same. They're both the same name, but they have two different tastes. Like it's why I don't know. Like I don't know, sweet paprika and spicy paprika. I don't know. Two things with different tastes, but we call them the same thing, I guess.
Yeah.
Even though, I mean, you can't use spices, but even though they don't have the same taste, they can't mevatel one another. And this also we saw, right? Okay, they can't, right? This was, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And
we saw this also with Harif things, right? Showing up, but there's an idea here that even though, as you put it, right, we paskin generally that it goes after the Shem and Tam.
It goes after Shem, we say?
Yeah.
Oh, that's what the Ramat said, right? Okay, yes. Right.
Exactly.
Okay, right.
I'm good. Glad you brought that up. We can remind ourselves we go after Shem, right? In terms of if it's min b'mino or not. But actually, in terms of nullifying flavor, we actually go after Tom. We follow Tom in this case, So don't think, as you put it, like I don't know if this is true, but imagine for the moment that red peppers and yellow peppers are different tastes, but they are the same name, right? This is actually a different case. This is where they have they are right. That have different flavors. So he says in this case we go after Shem, and they do not. Therefore, right, the yellow pepper doesn't mevatel the green, the whatever the other color I used was green pepper, even though they have the same name. So good. Any did I say I got a lot of looks, so maybe I said that wrong. Yeah, it's a limit to this whole thing, right? Is that even though you might think that they can marshal their different flavors against each other, we don't say that because they're of the same name. So, so it's a chumrah in some ways, right? Because we follow Shem and not Tom. So, because you're never going to taste the Tom of that thing, but but they do have different names. All right. The only other thing I actually had there's a long Ber Hatev on Kaf Aleph, which gets into the whole question of how in the world the Ramah doesn't push back on the Hanan case. And I just one of the things.
Do you think that's the same ruling, but the Kula? Like if you had, I don't know, is that a category that we think of that if you have it's the same name but different flavor?
I would say that different.
Yeah, the others.
Yeah. If there are things that are the same flavor but different names, can they marshal against each other? My guess is he would say no, right? Because it's not actually baftel the flavor anymore, right? The flavor is still there. It's strengthening the flavor, not doing bitul. It's a great question. That's my guess. I didn't look inside in the tshuva, which would also be helpful. I should probably do that. That's actually a good thing. If you can, anytime in the Pirkei Tshuva, go see if you can find the tshuva and actually see if it's, sometimes it may not even say what he thinks it says, but you should check, make sure. So, yeah, I'll just end with the Ramah gets in, not the Ramah, the Baratev gets in the whole question, how the Ramah doesn't push back on this seemingly Chanan Bishar Yisurim case of the Mechaber. And he includes things like what Rav Nachum brought up, right? If maybe you didn't realize the mixture beforehand, it doesn't become Chanan yet until you realize the mixture is one that he brings up as a possibility. And that's something to keep in the back of your mind, that if you don't know, that human knowledge is kind of required, sometimes to make something change categories. This is a cheap view of quantum mechanics, as I like to put it, but I figured you get a few smiles out of that. So people hamevin yavin in that case. So all right, everybody, thank you so much. Have a great Shabbos. Next week we're on to Tzadi Tet. I'm not in charge, but I will still be in charge of Chazarah. I do next week's Thanksgiving too. Let me double check that I have my family will permit me to do Chazarah. And if I do and you guys think
have to use Turkey as the examples, and then it's okay, right?
Oh my God! Well, Turkey's just us as the Asur examples, right? Turkey's Asur for all those who are, all those who are descendants of the Tosfot Yom Tov will say so. All right, I'll stop the recording if I say something really stupid.